Welcome to another episode of Six Figure Secrets for Fractional Experts. My name is Bradley Jacobs. I'm your host, the founder and CEO of Mylance. Today, I'm joined by Nicco Leone. Nicco is a growth execution specialist. He's consulted for billion-dollar companies, mostly in New York City. He scaled multiple startups to seven-figure exits, and he's now runs a consulting business that's professionalizing small businesses so they're ready to scale, fundraise, or sell, called Nemean Pride. Nicco, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Bradley. Glad to be here.
You're welcome. All right. So you talk about professionalizing small businesses. That's the first question. What does that mean?
Yeah. So, the way that we kind of talk about it, we call it organizational development, which is like possibly the most business jargony thing that you could ever say. But basically what that means is we build businesses, we develop organizations. And, the companies that we work with, and I know you talk to a lot of fractionals and you work with fractionals and they listen to the show. Usually the companies we're working with are 3 to 10 million in revenue, and they're sort of hitting some sort of growing pain. There's a couple different levels, that your business can get to when all of a sudden you hit a ceiling and you can't grow any bigger and you're running around, your hair's on fire. And we think that is all due to organizational development needs. So what that means is, you'll hit a ceiling if you're not clear on what your strategy is, if you don't have the right people in place and the right org chart structure in place to execute on the strategy, if you don't have the right tools in place to measure your progress as you're marching toward that strategy, and then if you don't have the right operation, processes, software tools to execute on that either. So we consider all of that kind of like your internal infrastructure: people, processes, strategy, measurement. And, we have a team of consultants that we've put together that help our clients to kind of professionalize the intersection and alignment of all of those things. And that unlocks their growth to the next stage of their business.
So it sounds like there's a bit of a bucket of, we kind of do what it takes to help you get out of this plateau, right?
Fair enough.
Which, as you communicate that to a potential new client, I think it's a little difficult, right? I push our consultants, our fractionals, to say, hey, get what you do down to one clear, granular sentence so I tangibly know what you do. Is that an issue, a challenge that you face? Like, how do you think about communicating your value really clearly and concisely to a potential client?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It would be a big challenge if we were, sort of like shotgun approach, trying to put out a lot of like marketing language out there, advertising language to try to get clients in the door. You're right. It's tough when it's like, we offer so many different things to get you to the next stage. And so we really just kind of talk about the pain that they're feeling. And by focusing on that pain, that at least gets us on a sales call. And then on a sales call, then we can really dive into our process. And when we outline our process and we talk through it, the first 90 days, we do a deep dive intensive and we look at this and this and this and this. And then after that, we put the right team together. And these are the types of consultants we have that will build the team based on. And, we have like a sort of a well-worn way of presenting that information, the process and what we're going to do. And then they get it. And usually they're like, oh, I didn't really realize that like organizational development and aligning all of these different pieces is kind of what I needed, but actually that makes sense. And there are many other companies out there who don't really need everything that we're doing. Maybe they just need help on their marketing, or they just need help on their sales, or, plugging some hole. But those aren't the companies that we work with. We work with the ones that are like, they really want to grow, and they need an entire team to help them grow.
I think a really important point you mentioned is the how of what you do, right? How you actually make the transformation what you guys do. It's not important in the initial to get them on the phone, right? I want everyone listening to like really hear that, right? Like you talked about, all they need to do is feel heard in their problem and that you get it.
Yeah.
Is that right?
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah. And we've had, marketing consultants who coached us on that so that we adapted and then started to do that because everybody has a tendency to, God, I've seen so many advertisements that just talk about the product. It's like, here's the product we're selling. It's like, I don't care. That's not entertaining. There's nothing emotional that I'm attaching to that. So yeah, if you speak to the pain, or even if you speak to some sort of pleasure, there's advertisement out there that talks about the benefits of, if I mean, think of like every pharmaceutical ad, which I hate, but every one of those is like somebody like, scuba diving and their, eczema's gone away, and then they're on the golf course or whatever. It's just all these like positive emotions and experiences. So that's the type of stuff that goes into an advertisement. And then the sales call is completely different. The sales call is like, let me really dig in, understand all of your pain. And I work with this really good sales coach, and he kind of taught me how to do this. It's like, you're on a sales call and you're pulling out their pain. And as soon as you like identify a pain, you want to like rip the wound as wide open as you can on that sales call and pour as much salt in it as you can. And that's how you then kind of you really focus on the pain, and then you transition into, well, here's how we can solve that for you. And yeah, we've done a lot of learning around that.
So what I hear you say is, and I just want to reiterate this so our audience really captures it, is the message that you might send on LinkedIn or email, or, even in an ad, is about either the pain that they're feeling, so they feel heard in that, or the benefit that they'll get from potentially working with you. So they're like, oh, there's a world I could do this. I could be pain-free. I could have my business just growing without all of these fires and whatnot. And then the sales call is an entirely different animal, where you're actually talking about going into granular detail about that pain. And as you said, pouring as much salt into that wound as possible, so they really feel it emotionally, right? Like, God, this sucks, what we're dealing with. And then you can talk about, okay, well, we actually built a solution to solve it.
Exactly. And, it's something you emphasized earlier was like, I'm not in the marketing stage of things, in the advertising stage of things, I'm not telling them about my product. Even in on the sales call, I'm still not really telling them. I'm not telling them the how. I'm still not. I'm just uncovering their pain even more. And then I'm presenting like pretty high level how we can get them to their desired solution in the future. And some people just buy based off of that. Some people are really going to want to dig deeper and get you to tell them the how. But honestly, I've learned to withhold as much of the how as I possibly can in the sales process, because I think we all have a tendency to kind of like over explain. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what our product is. And then you like literally say everything about it. And if you give them too much information, they start to feel like, I can maybe do some of that myself. And it actually kills the sale. And they're not going to do it themselves. We all know that. But just the thought that maybe they could do it themselves, that will hold them back from hiring you.
It brings me to the next question of the balance between so much educated customers are skeptical as hell. And they're skeptical because there are some companies, and many companies, that are very good at marketing. They're very good at this dream outcome and painting this beautiful picture, and it can be total bullshit. Right. Yeah. And I think so the educated customer is asking those how questions to avoid the mistake, to avoid spending the money and not getting a result. So how do you balance? I totally agree with you. From a pure sales perspective, getting into the how, you basically don't want to do it. But there are a lot of customers that are going to ask those questions. So how do you find that balance between, hey, we're legitimate, right? We are going to provide a great result for you, and I don't really want to tell you all of the how, because you're just going to kind of get in your own way.
So I think video testimonials work really well. So having an actual, business owner, customer you've worked with in the past, and you have that video. We actually link to video testimonials like on our proposals that we share with people. So right when they get to that last page of the proposal where it's like, sign here, it's like, oh, by the way, here's some of our past customers. And that's a huge credibility builder. Case studies are sort of another version of that can help. That's a way of saying, here's what we did for these guys. So it's kind of telling them the how, but it's in a different way than, like outlining your entire process and exactly what you're going to do. And because once you know all their pain, which is what you've pulled out in the sales call, you already probably know a lot of the things that you would do to solve those pains. And so you really don't want to be giving them a case study of themselves while you're in the sales process, but you can give them a case study of somebody else's pains. That's totally fine. That won't give them the, I can do it myself sort of mentality.
How can fractional executives, so one person consulting businesses, how do you think they could apply this most effectively to their business? Like some of the things that you just mentioned.
Well, the video testimonial thing is super easy. And there's a bunch of marketing agencies or video production agencies or whatever that do those for you. Case studies, very easy to put together. You can build them in Canva. You just need some details on some past clients you've worked with. So, I mean, those are some very easy things. I think if you're a fractional executive, you know the value that you provide, right? So it may not hurt to talk to a fractional sales executive, right? Because a lot of fractional executives are sort of like in communities of fractionals. And, a lot of the sales stuff that I'm talking about right now, I actually have I learned that from like a sales consulting firm that I actually partnered with. And so I didn't actually pay for any of that. But I partnered with them and worked together on a client with that person. And I just got to learn it like through osmosis as they were teaching the client. And so those sorts of like partnerships where you can really learn from other fractionals, with complementary skills, that's a great way to learn for free, basically.
Yeah. That's a great tactic right there. I want to circle back to something you said and you kind of glossed over it, but I think it's really important. And I preach this a lot, but I think that you can never preach it too much, is that you mentioned on the sales call, you're asking those questions to uncover the deep pain that this company is in, which is very different than getting on the call and saying, hey, I'm Nicco and I'm a badass in all the following ways. Can you talk a little bit about the difference of those two and why this strategy is so effective?
Yeah. So what I learned is like on sales calls, you really want to be appearing as a guide, and you really want to be appearing as someone who is not desperate. You don't need the sale. You're just there to chat with them and hopefully guide them toward the right solution. And if you're genuine about that, then sometimes I'm on a sales call and I realize at the end of it, like, you know what? Hey, I actually have this great resource that I think would be better for you. Like I could help you, but I know this other guy who's had this great firm that I can connect you with. Or I think all you need is this tool or whatever, go meet these people. If you're really just trying to figure out like, are they a fit for you? Or are they a fit for somebody else in your network? You can come to that conversation from like a little bit more of a humble and vulnerable and not desperate place, and a place of curiosity. I think like curiosity is probably like the main word I would use for it. That's what has worked best on sales calls for me. If you come in and you're, way too cocky, or you're doing any of the sort of like sales tactics that everybody knows at this point and nobody likes to be like directed at them, right? So putting some type of like time threat at the end of it, or if you buy, we're doing a special deal like through the end of the month. It's like, are you really? Like that's bullshit, just don't use any of that stuff. Just be genuine, be curious, and you'll build a lot more trust that way. And ultimately, that's what you're trying to get out of the sales calls. You want them to trust you by the end of it.
Let's talk about sales calls for a minute, because that's kind of the number one. I tell this in our sales training, like every single consulting deal started with a sales call. And it's almost a misnomer, right? It's not a sales call. It's almost like a trust building call. Like that's probably what we should rename it.
Yeah.
But how many, maybe for the rest of this episode, we'll name it that. So how many trust building calls would you say you're having on average each month?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, because there are so many different types of trust building calls. That was kind of the first thing I thought of. Like I have a podcast as well. And, when I have guests on my podcast, those are trust building calls. I mean, you have me on a trust building call right now, right?
Yep.
And some portion of your guests will actually become clients. If you sort of determine throughout the course of the conversation, oh, they actually maybe could use my services, then at the end of it, you can talk to them about that. For me, it's like 1 out of every 12 or 15 people I have on my podcast, I'm like, oh, there's actually a pretty good fit here. So that's like one type of trust building call. Then there's the other type, which is like a genuine, like they know that we're going to be talking about them possibly hiring me. And I am not on many of those in a given month. Maybe like 2 maximum. Right. 1, maybe 2. The reason for that, I would say, is because, the way that we've really focused on growing our business is trying to like maximize customer lifetime value. We've really focused more on our existing customers and how to expand our monthly, project size with them, and also how to expand into the future the number of months that we're going to be working with them. And so we haven't like aggressively tried to like bring in new clients. It hasn't been our focus, but we've been able to grow our revenue every year, starting with our existing clients, getting referrals from those existing clients. The like sales calls where we're coming into the call, they know that they may buy from me. Usually those people are coming from one of my existing customers as a referral. So, long-winded way of answering your question. I'm probably on one real sales call a month, and I'm probably on 15 other forms of trust building calls, whether it's a referral from a friend or a podcast or something like that.
And do you do outbound marketing? Do you do any LinkedIn outbound, any LinkedIn content, any email outbound? Like, do you do those?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. We do. We have like some automated LinkedIn outreach. We have an automated email, campaigns. We're producing content because we have a podcast. So that's like a good way of doing creating content. You can splice it up and whatever. We have articles, that we write. Those go on the website. Those then go out through LinkedIn. Those then go out through our email list. So yeah, we're definitely dabbling in that. I have never seen a client come from that directly. But I have definitely, like, once I'm getting to a point where, I'm going to have a sales call, people absolutely go on my LinkedIn and read some of our posts, and they go to the website and they read an article and they go to the podcast and they listen to a couple episodes. Like, that for sure happens because they tell me that they did that before the sales call. So yeah. I still think it's valuable to like build credibility going into a sales call. But in terms of that being like a lead generator, I don't know about that.
Yeah. And I guess the question too is, if you have these automated campaigns in LinkedIn, you are growing your network on LinkedIn every single day, right? And then you're publishing content and they're seeing it, and it takes time. So there may not be this direct, okay, I sent them a message, they said yes, we booked a call, and now it's a client. But do you think there's some indirect where, someone's been following your content for a number of months potentially, and then they come to you because you've actually built trust with them and you don't even know it directly?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, there are people who have looked at our content for months, received our emails for months, and then suddenly decide to actually download one of our ebooks from our website, so it takes time, and then they make it to the next stage and they trust you a little bit more, and, they'll tap into one of your lead magnets. I guess I don't know if that has ever led to an actual client. I guess it's possible. But like I said, I'm not going to stop doing that stuff because of the credibility building aspect of it.
As you produce the podcast and create this content, whether it's the lead magnets, the emails, the LinkedIn content, is that someone on your team? Are you outsourcing it? Like, how do you think about investing in that as part of your consulting business?
It's a good question, because I really try to minimize the cost of that because of kind of what I said earlier, where we focus so much on customer lifetime value. It's like I want to reinvest a lot into that and growing our business through that strategy. So take the LinkedIn automation stuff. Like, we use a tool. One of my consultants, who is one of our like operational improvement software implementation consultants, got the tool for us, set it up, created the, sequence of campaign drips and whatever, and got that up and running. Same thing with our, email campaigns. It's one of my consultants. So yeah, it's usually somebody on my team doing that. It is often me, like, through my conversations with other entrepreneurs, I'm usually the one who finds the tool. I'm like, oh, what's this? Somebody told me about this thing. You guys should look into this. And, but they sort of implement it.
Yeah. And are these your consultants? I know you're about a team of 7. Are they employees of the business? Are they like, how does that work?
They're all contractors. And I am probably, like, the projects that I have them working on is probably like 50 to 75% of the work that they do, but they are contractors and they take on their own projects outside of working with us.
It's a big question we get of, I'm interested in scaling up my fractional business to be more than just me, but I don't have enough consistent client revenue to hire someone, right? And
Yeah.
it's a really good reminder of you don't need to hire someone,
Right. Yeah.
right? You can bring
Nowadays, especially. Yeah.
right? And so I imagine, tell me if this is wrong, but you win a new project, right? And then you assemble the right team to say, hey, can I get X number of hours or X expertise for this project? And they're happy to say yes, because now they just had a project fall in their lap. There's probably a little arbitrage there, right? You're paying them a little bit less than the client's paying you, which makes sense. You own the business. They're happy,
Yep.
you're happy, client's happy. It all works.
Totally.
Is that right?
That's how it works. That's how it works. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think, you know, I don't know, we may reach a point where we really want like full-time resources, full-time consultants. I just don't know. I don't know what would have to happen for us to want that, because it seems scalable with 1099 consultant work, you know.
Yeah.
But maybe that's well, maybe this may be a telling, actually. A lot of the our business is a family business, and so some of my consultants are actually like siblings. And so I know they're not going to cut and run or do a bad job or whatever. Another one of my consultants, you know, I've known since college. So there's like, you know, actual relationship built there. If you are trying to scale your consulting firm and you're talking about, you know, people who may just leave at any moment, that then does become a little bit risky, I would say.
Yeah.
Although I don't know that making them a W-2 makes it any less risky. Honestly, people just cut and run all the time. So.
Yeah, fair enough. You know, I think about my first job out of college. I was a management consultant, part of a maybe 100-person consulting company. And that did feel different because, and maybe this is where it ends up getting to, but there was such a standard of how they presented their work to their clients, where the amount of training, onboarding, feedback, standardization across the company was what they really wanted. And so it just would not have made sense, right, to bring us on as part-time contractors.
I worked for Capgemini out of college, big consulting firm. I was in New York. So yeah, totally. They have all these templates and frameworks and tools and whatever. I mean, we have that too. I do think that is a crucial thing that any fractional or, you know, larger consulting firm needs to do, is figure out what their tools are and what their frameworks are and stay consistent around that, but to also keep them simple so that you can easily train a new person on them, for sure.
One of the things that I'm going to switch gears a little bit, one of the things you talk about is living your dream life now, right? Don't wait until retirement. Tell me what that really means to you.
Yeah, so I'll tell you how it manifests in my life exactly. Okay. So I live with my wife. We have a son. We live in the Caribbean this year on the island of Antigua. Last year we lived in Europe, bouncing around different countries every month and a half. The 2 years before that, we lived in Hawaii, on the island of Kauai. And so for me, what it means is, instead of working countless hours, trying to make it to retirement with enough saved up to then do some retirement type activities, we mix the retirement activities into daily life. I went for a run earlier today, out to the beach, went swimming, came in the middle of the workday, right? Came back. Here I am talking to you on a podcast. I just think it leads to more sanity and more enjoyment in life. And so that's why we try to live our life that way. I don't think everybody needs to do that from like a global travel perspective, but I do think for everybody, there is a lot of value in not just grinding it out every single day. Like, you got to mix in some hobbies and things that you love to do. And that's the only way to stay sane.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds ideal. And I think the question then, even myself as an entrepreneur, and I have, an incredible amount of flexibility, right? I can move meetings, I can schedule them whenever I want, right? I can do it. And yet it feels like I need to really be kind of grinding away most days to get my business to where I want to go, right? It's hard. It's a lot of work, right? If we were making like billions of dollars in profit, be a different story. But, we got work to do. So I guess that ends up being the question is, and I'm sure all the people listening, most of the people listening say, damn, my fractional business is a full-time freaking job, right? Between business development, finding new clients, servicing my clients, and all the back end bookkeeping, everything. It's a big job. Like, how do I find time to go for that run, go to the beach for a swim in the middle of the day, travel around, which is amazing, and also takes a lot of time and energy and moving things and family. And how do we make time for it all?
Well, I'm going to come back to the customer lifetime value thing that I've hit on a couple times on this recording. I mean, if you are able to increase that, which is basically, like I said earlier, the amount of money that you make from a given client in a given month and over their entire lifetime. If you can work on increasing those things, like one of the key ways of increasing that is creating some sort of like monopoly power that you have, or I like to call it like mini monopoly, because it's not a true, volume based monopoly that you have. But if you can somehow niche down, or at least in your like marketing message, you appear to be niche, you appear to be focused on exactly that type of business that you're talking to, that type of stuff works really well to make your customers stickier so they stick around longer. And so if you like really study how to get stickier customers, how to keep them around longer, the fear of losing them starts to dissipate. And that's what I find with a lot of small businesses. The reason that we're grinding it out every day thinking, oh my God, I have so many things to do, is because there's like a fear that you're going to lose your existing clients soon. And so therefore you have to be selling new clients right now. And you don't need to live that way in reality,
It is the most common question I get is I don't have a consistent pipeline for new clients.
Yeah.
Right. And contracts inevitably end. And I think you're saying
someone will die. Someone will die eventually. That's true.
Well, so what I hear you saying is you're looking for clients to basically work with them forever.
Not forever. We try to find clients that are 2 to 7 million in revenue, and we try to work with them until they are about 20 to 25 million in revenue. And at that point, we replace ourselves with like full-time hires and we're out of the picture. But it's not easy to go from 3 million to 20 million. I mean, that takes years. So yeah, we want to work with our clients ideally for like, 5 to 10 years. And so when you have that sort of longevity with your clients, the need for a pipeline, I mean, you don't really need a pipeline, I mean, you need a little bit coming in, but that's kind of it.
I'm sure no one's tuning in randomly at, 28 minutes in, but like you do marketing activities to keep a pipeline going. So I just want to like
for sure
say that to everyone. It's like, okay, you do all of those things. And I hear you. The priority is the longevity. So the question then ends up being to get a client for 5 to 10 years. What is the key to really, like, what does that mean in practice to focus on increasing the LTV of existing clients?
I guess you have to really think about like what exactly are you offering? What is your firm offering? And for me, I kind of explained it earlier, like we offer so many things. It didn't start that way. We started out, we were offering one thing. It was, we'll come in and we'll build a financial dashboard for you so that you understand your finances. Like we'll teach them to you. And it started that way. And we started to find this like niche that we like to work with, which was these companies, 2 to 7 million in revenue, let's say. And they didn't have a CFO. And so we knew that we were providing them with tremendous value with this financial dashboard. We're teaching the CEO something that he didn't know before. But then what we found was what they also needed was some HR support, because the CEO was also kind of doing all their HR. So we debated, like, is this something we want to add on? And that's always a difficult balance, because it's like you want to stick to your core, but if you're able to expand your core offering in a way that you can like still wrap your arms around and deliver consistently and deliver well, if you can expand that, you've now created a little bit of monopoly power, because you've bundled two things together that otherwise they'd have to get from two different vendors. And if you can bundle two things and also integrate those two things that you've bundled, our clients love the fact that their new CFO and their new HR director are completely aligned at all times about things, right? And so over time, we've bundled more and more into what we offer. And again, it's very risky to like keep expanding your scope, but that's like our goal was to figure out what other pain is our client feeling. And if we expand into that, that will give us that like bundling monopoly effect, but it will also expand our customer lifetime value. And so it's like, then we had to go through a pricing exercise of, what would that be worth? What would it cost us to deliver that? And you go through that, and all of a sudden our projects went from $1,500 a month per client to $6,000 a month per client. And then we put something else in, and then it was 8,000 a month per client. And now we're, each of our clients is somewhere between 10 and 15K a month. And once you kind of get up to that level, now you understand what I'm talking about, where it's like you don't really need that many of those. And you're providing them with so many different things that you're sort of like indispensable to them at that time,
Yeah, it's a great story, and I'm really glad you shared where you started, because I think people might see you and they're like, "Oh, they offer all these different things, so I should do that too." And it's like, "Hey, let's remind ourselves where you started with a very, very niche financial dashboard, right? Which is clearly of value. You found the fit there, and then you grew from there." And for the individuals in the room, that are listening to this, you can do the same thing. You don't need all these different people, right? Like I remember I got in with my first client and it was all about launching their marketplace and it was all the operations side of the house. But I started asking questions like, what are you guys doing for business development? What are you doing for marketing? What are you doing for design? What are you doing for pricing? And all of a sudden I had my hand in a bunch of different projects and they like couldn't get rid of me, right? I was like kind of essential to a bunch of different things. And all of a sudden I worked with them for a long time compared to the initial contract. So,
and I'll go into another thing real quick to maximize that customer lifetime value. Another thing we've just always focused on from the beginning is, as we're expanding our scope, we're also making sure that we are like highly available to our clients and always kind of like a step ahead of them. And so we think about what they need, we anticipate their needs, we communicate well, we communicate quickly, we don't if we mess up, we own up to it. If they mess up, we call them out for it. And like that honesty is really important. So there are just certain, this isn't like rocket science, what I'm saying right now, but it's just like, do a really good job, And if you focus on doing a really good job, they love you and they want you to stick around. And that's where I think a lot of people fall short is, you come in and you're doing a pretty good job, but your focus is on like, how do I minimize my time commitment on this client so that I can use my time to go get more clients? And it's like, that's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're always going to need to go get new clients because your existing clients are pissed off at you,
It is a message that's been told a number of times in this podcast, and it almost sounds so obvious. Like, yeah, do a good job. But what I'm hearing time and time again from you and other people is that most people don't do that.
Surprising, but true. Yeah. And maybe it shouldn't be surprising, honestly, because I mean, you think back to, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like when we were in school, I don't know if you were a straight A student, but there weren't many of them. There were like some straight A students, a lot of B's, slightly fewer C's, some D's, some F's, right? But like most people were probably like B minus students. It was probably the average. And it's like, then all those people go to college and then they go to the working world and that we're just made up of all these people that used to be in school. Isn't it the same distribution? So like, of course, most companies are going to be like B minus companies. And if you can, even if you are a B minus company, if you can find a way to just focus on your customers and deliver really high quality work, expand your bundle just a little bit so you get a higher share of wallet from your customer, you'll be more profitable. You can reinvest that money into additional training, additional certifications, additional tools that you build into your framework to make you do your job even better. And you can become a B plus and then an A minus and then an A company. And that's how you're going to keep your clients forever, once you're delivering that quality.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way of thinking about it of starting with school. The other thing I think about is, school, I'm trying to think, I'm going to make this up on the spot, but school to some degree was interesting because I would get A's in the classes I was the best in, right? I was like a math, physics kind of guy. And then in history, I just couldn't stand history. I was like, why do I have to just blatantly memorize all this stuff that happened a few hundred years ago? Now I frankly wish I had learned more because I would love to know history, but different topic. But in business, I find that, if you can play to your strengths, right? Play to those A classes, right? Like I'm still good in the specific problem solving, right? Versus like creative writing or any sort of like video production or anything like that. Like I'm really good at, okay. Yeah. If I can focus on that, that's great, but it's actually not enough. What I need to do is not only focus on my strengths, I need to go the extra mile to cross all my T's and dot all my I's and actually go where most people won't go, Most people stop at like 60%, 70%, and they don't go into the nitty gritty and they don't follow through on what might be hard. That's what I see. It's like, yes, play to your strengths, but then go the extra mile. And I think I'm curious to get your thoughts. That's, in my opinion, why most people end up being, B minus in the business and life sense. But I'm curious to get your thoughts.
No, I agree with you. And I mean, I think that's, I think even, extending this school analogy, the people who got A's on their projects were the ones who went the extra mile with their project and made it just a little bit better. Put that little, like the spine protector on the pamphlet that they made. I don't remember what we used to do in school, but just made it a little bit prettier, and yeah, that happens in business all the time. And I mean, if you have a moment with your client where you wow them, I mean, that's what you're going for. Like you want them to say about you at the end of a meeting when they go back to the rest of their team, you want them to say like, man, I just got off a call with Nicco and it was awesome. Like, here's what I learned on this call, or like, here's this thing he took off my plate on this call. And it's not that hard to do those things, but you always have to be thinking about it. And honestly, it kind of goes back to the beginning of the conversation. What is the pain that my client is possibly feeling today? Yeah. And can I go just a little bit farther to solve that pain for them?
For me as an entrepreneur, I find the hardest thing is simply focusing on the one thing that we need to deliver and delivering it so freaking well. And if that means I need to work on basically the same thing for days and years on end, which is basically what it is, right? It's like not being distracted with something else and making sure that I actually focus on the needle moving parts of the business, we're successful. And if I get distracted and I distract the team and all this kinds of stuff, it's much more difficult. Like that's what I find for me. It's like, yes, focus on my strengths and then focus on the one thing we need to actually be doing.
I agree. And honestly, when it comes to the work we do with our clients, organizational development, almost all of our clients have prioritization, challenges as well, because it's tough. There's a million things you could be working on any given day, and a million ideas you're having simultaneously, and people you talk to who are, oh, maybe I should do that too. And, so that is actually a value that we provide to a lot of our clients, is we're sort of tracking, hey, look, remember we met at the beginning, like 6 months ago, at the beginning of this 6-month period, and we said these were the goals for the next quarter, and these were the goals for the quarter after that. Like, you're bringing up a couple different goals here that they sound important, but let's put them in the right prioritization here, so we're not all going crazy, So yeah, focus is tough. It is always tough.
And a remote, right? For remote teams, I'm finding it really difficult to, hey, we set these goals, we set these projects every single day, every single week. These are the top things we need to be doing. Are there any tricks that you've seen specifically? Any tips, any tricks, any tools that you've seen specifically for remote teams, but I guess really anyone, that helps increase the likelihood that focus, sustains over months and quarters?
Well, there's a couple things. And it you have to take the time to kind of go through these exercises, but there's this thing called the Eisenhower box, or the Eisenhower matrix, which is basically a way of taking all of the possible things you could be working on, all of these things you think are priorities. Maybe there's like 25 of them. And it's a 4-box matrix, and it's urgency on one of the axes, and then it's like importance and impact on the other axis. And so it's, the ones that are high urgency and high impact, those are the ones those are your actual priorities. And then the ones that are low urgency but high impact, you want to schedule those out in the future. So like actually put them on your calendar and make time for them, because they are important. If it's low importance, high urgency, delegate it. And if it's low importance, low urgency, ignore it. Don't ever even think about it again. Right? So that's kind of like the first step to arranging all your priorities in the right way. And then once you do that, that top box, high urgency, high importance, it still may have like 5 things in it. And so then there's another technique that we've used pretty successfully called the Pomodoro technique. And yeah, people have probably heard of that. 25 minutes working on it, 5-minute break. 25 minutes working, 5-minute break. And it's these like little shifts from priority 1, take a break, go to my next priority, take a break. And so you get to mix in a little bit of variability in there, and that is what I think is so important for people to do in their workday. Just like you should mix in going for a run or going to the beach or saying hi to your kid or whatever, because it frees up the mind, it cleanses the stress. Otherwise, you end up just banging your head against a wall on something, and you're like, "Oh shit, 3 hours just passed. What the hell was I doing?"
Right. Yeah. God, that's so difficult.
Yeah.
Our CTO recently came to me, and he was really struggling with a bug he just couldn't resolve. And he just asked me, he's like, "Do you think I should just keep working on this, or do you think I should move on to another task and come back to it?" And I was like, 100% move on to another thing and come back. Right. You're probably
Right.
going to realize like the fix, like when you're sleeping, you're going to wake up and be like, duh, that was it. And it's going to be easy for you. But if you just keep going at the same thing, yeah, you go down further rabbit holes and who knows.
Totally. It is amazing how much better of a problem solver you are when you stop trying to solve the problem. It's so weird how that happens. You go for a walk and you're like, "Oh, I got it.
Right.
Figured it out."
Oh my God. Amazing. We're about out of time. I'm curious if you were to leave our audience with one anecdote, one tip, what would you leave them with?
Oh man, that's tough. Let's see. I'm gonna, you know what? I think the topic of this episode has been lifetime value, customer lifetime value. I'll tell you a story about one of our clients where this worked out really, really well for, getting that larger share of wallet, increasing customer lifetime value. We had a client that was a nail distribution company. So the hammer and nail type nail, and total commodity. Anybody can sell these. This is metal nails. They're different sizes and whatever, but it's basically a commodity. And some of their biggest customers, like their main customer segment, was these people who manufacture pallets. And pallets are like the things that go in a truck and you put all the boxes on the pallet, right? So it's the wood. There's like two things you need for that. You need nails and you need wood. And so they were really like in a price war basically with these other, nail distributors, and their profit margins were terrible. And so what we did was we went to their client sites. We understood who their clients were, what their pain was. And what we realized when we were out there was their main pain was they got the nails, they got the wood, they were buying those based on price. But then they had these nail guns that they were using, which they got from a third vendor. And the nail guns were breaking. And when they broke, it was a huge pain in the ass for them to get a new nail gun in or get them repaired or whatever. And that was like their biggest pain, we realized just from talking to them. And so what my client ended up doing was rolling out this new nail gun service department. And it's not their core. It's not what they do, right? But it's not that hard to learn. So they have to now stock nail guns and do all that stuff. But as soon as they started offering that to their clients, that now allows them to have more touch points with their clients where they're actually like in the facility, building more trust, building that relationship. They're now solving their client's main pain. They're always there. They're repairing the nail guns. And they've now been able to also increase. So they're charging their clients for that, but now they've also increased the prices of their nails, even though they could get those nails from somewhere else, because that extra service that comes with it is so important. And so, I want to hit on that as kind of the last note. Now, I will also say what they did not do was start selling lumber, because that would be expanding your scope too far beyond what you need to expand it to get that monopoly control.
Wow. Great story. I really didn't know where that was going to go. So, and yeah, very, very cool. And if people want to find you, where's the best place for people to find you?
So our website, nemeanpride.com. I'm sure you'll link to it.
Yep.
Go on the website. You can read about us, the different things that we do. We've got quizzes on there. We've got, ebooks that you can download, all sorts of content. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. We also have, content that we put out through there. If you want to message me on LinkedIn, also totally open to that. Happy to talk to you. Those are probably the best two sources.
Amazing. All right. And we'll link everything in the show notes so people will be able to find it. No problem. But Nicco, thanks for your time, your expertise, sharing your advice with the audience. It's been great to have you on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
You got it.